This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today I will be welcoming a legendary and very talented singer-songwriter, and I'm talking about Harriet Schock. Harriet wrote Helen Reddy's classic top 10 hit Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady. She also wrote a lot of familiar songs like That's the Way It Is With You for the Partridge Family, First Time on a Ferris Wheel, which has been covered by many people, including Smokey Robinson and Syreeta for the Last Dragon soundtrack. I first became aware of her because she co-wrote the theme song to the new Adventures of Pippi Longstocking, which I just love that song. It's so wonderful and it holds up to this day. And she's done a lot of songs for soundtracks. She wrote, I believe it was lyrics or music for the Phantom of the Opera remake with Robert Englund in 1989. And she's been in some of the more recent Henry Jaglom movies as an actress. And we're going to talk about all of that stuff today. And I cannot wait. She also has a memoir out and a documentary. And it's going to be a great conversation. Also, rest in peace, Richard Belzer. We're losing them all the time. You know, the man was one of the greats in stand-up who came up in that New York scene, was the MC at the Catch a Rising Star, discovered Pat Benatar, and he is just a legend amongst legends. Rest in peace, Richard Belzer. You were the fucking president. So yeah, here is my interview with Harriet Schock.
Hello.
Hey Harriet, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm fine.
This is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Wonderful. So, going back in time, I was reading that your father taught you how to play piano by ear from the time you were 4 years old, and that continued throughout your childhood. And then you wrote your first song in 7th grade. Do you remember how and what that was?
It was something, I kind of vaguely remember part of the melody, but I don't remember anything else except that it rhymed where songs should have rhymed, but it had nothing real to say. You know, I was in the 7th grade. What do you expect?
Yeah, so it started out as just music and then evolved into some kind of lyrics then.
Yeah, I wrote the lyrics, you know, along with it, the first verse, and then I put them together with the melody I created. But, you know, it's like any child trying to do art. You hear other people do it and you figure I could do that, but it's not as easy as you think.
Absolutely, it isn't. So what kind of music did you listen to growing up?
Well, you know, I kind of had two mothers, one white and one black. The black one wasn't my biological mother, but she was a huge influence on me. And the white lady didn't like the radio. It made her nervous. So I just listened to Ernestine's radio stations, and that was primarily Ray Charles and R&B. So that's pretty much what I heard growing up. Even though I'm from Dallas, people assume I heard country music, but when my friend would have it on the radio, I would roll the window up on my side for fear the people in the next car might think I was listening to it. So I was never a country music fan until way later when I was grown and living out here. Eventually I learned to appreciate it because there's really great craft in the country market. But I grew up in R&B, so, you know.
Yeah, that's great. Do you remember the first album you ever bought with your own money?
Oh, no. I actually don't. I remember there was a single called Honky Tonk, which was an instrumental, and I put it on my little 45 record player on the piano and copied it note for note because that, you know, I just wanted to be able to play that. So, but I don't remember the first album. I grew up with like Ella Fitzgerald singing Rodgers and Hart and Cole Porter and stuff. And they used to have them at the grocery store, and I would buy them every time I saw one. And then the record stores, you could go in and actually listen to them. And so I would listen to, there was the Beatles and everything, but that was, I think Ray Charles was when people say, who's your major influence, I say Ray Charles. So
yeah,
probably one of his albums might have been one of the first.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. How about the first time you ever saw live music?
Well, when I was a child, my parents took me to New York with my sister, and we saw a show on Broadway. I think it was Pajama Game. And, but a live music concert, I don't know, I was pretty fortunate that I got to see the Rolling Stones and Elvis Presley and the Beatles and everything, because they all came to Dallas,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did stage crew for the Pajama Game when I was in high school.
Really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with all the songs. I heard them over and over again.
I'm sure you did.
Yes. So that's cool. After high school, you attended UT Austin and got a BA in English. Were you on the trajectory of teaching by that point?
No, I got a teaching certificate by advanced standing, which meant you didn't have to go to classes. You just read a few things and took the test. But I never really planned to teach. I became, right out of college, I got a job as an advertising copywriter because I wanted to be a writer. I never wanted to be a teacher necessarily, but, that's good too. It's just that when I got to write ads, I was still writing songs on the side. So they would never let me do the jingles. They thought of me as a copywriter, and they hired jingle companies for that. So I never got to participate in the jingle side of advertising, but I did write ads for print and things like that and commercials and stuff.
Wow. Then you got married, moved to Los Angeles, and there was a brief time you wanted to be a screenwriter?
Yeah, well, I did. I studied with Sid Field and various ways, but that was already in your decade, the 80s.
Yeah.
But when I first got out here in the 70s, I first started trying to write for television. I know you interviewed Tracy Newman, who's a student and friend.
Yep.
And I didn't know what I was doing, and it took me by months to write a screenplay and only a day to write a song. And when I had a hit, I thought, I should give up this other dream. So in the 80s, after I'd already had a hit record, and 3 albums and all that, I started studying screenwriting again, and that's when I studied with Sid Field and found out, plot point 1 has to be on page 20.
Yeah.
And it's still a love of mine, but I don't really do it anymore but I love knowing what I know when I watch a movie.
Yeah, I've been writing screenplays since I was 12. I had a typewriter and everything, and I love doing it,
Oh, me too. I mean, those characters living in your mind, it's so wonderful.
It is. It's a lot of fun. Getting people to read them is a challenge, though.
Yeah, that's true. I know I had one that got all the way, I don't remember what company, and they called it a screwball comedy. But I just have comedy in everything I write. It was a serious subject. So when they called it a screwball comedy, I thought, maybe I'm on the wrong road here.
Oh, not at all. Those are the best ones,
Yeah.
Love those, yeah. So you start performing in the clubs around town. Were you playing like Ledbetter's and the Troubadour and the Cheetah and all those?
Well, I hadn't gotten to the Troubadour yet. I was playing the Bitter End West, which was a gay bar.
Right.
Because the only place you could play original material in the 70s was gay bars. Because they didn't care what you played. They weren't going to listen anyway. However, I did go every Monday, and I got a following, even though the last thing they were interested in was the white chick at the piano. But, they actually started listening because I introduced every song in a way to get them involved with their own lives, and they had to listen to the song to solve the riddle I had posed.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these guys became my first fans, and I love them to this day,
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I played, and then eventually, of course, I did play the Troubadour and places like that when I got a record deal.
And of course, the Ciro's, which became the Comedy Store.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. I don't know if I ever played there before it became the Comedy Store. I played there a little bit afterwards because they had musical guests sometimes.
Right. Did you see a lot of the stand-up comedians around, like Cheech and Chong and George Carlin, Richard Pryor?
Oh, God, I love Richard Pryor and George Carlin, but I don't think I ever saw them live. What years are we talking about?
Like late 60s, early 70s?
No, I wasn't here then, but
okay.
Unless they came to Dallas. But I was, in the 70s I was here, and I guess I missed that, just trying to get a record deal, a publishing deal, and all that. But I sure watched them on TV.
Okay, by the time you got there, then there was probably the country rock scene was probably emerging with like Linda Ronstadt and Poco and the Eagles and all of that, right?
Yeah, more like that.
I see. Okay, I was way off there. So, in 1973, one of your songs, That's the Way It Is With You, it got sold to the Partridge Family in the episode Al and the Family. Where did you get the inspiration for that song, and how did it end up in the hands of the producers?
Well, it's interesting. You said I sold it. People don't actually sell songs. They just get recorded, and then the songwriter hopefully gets some of the money.
Right.
But what happened was I recorded it on my first album, Hollywood Town, and in those days there was a radio station called KNX-FM, and they played album cuts. And there's now a station in homage to them, but they were wonderful. They played new artists, and every cut on all three albums got played on that radio station. So I don't know if they heard my album or if they heard it on the radio, but they cut it because they heard my version of it. And that's pretty much the way everything I wrote and recorded got covered, is my version got heard by someone and they covered it.
Do you think that David Cassidy did the song justice?
Oh, yes. I love him. He's very soulful, and I was interviewed by the lady who did his biography and everything. I had no complaints. I don't always feel that way about covers, but I absolutely loved what he did.
Yeah, I reached out to that lady a year ago. I haven't heard back yet, but I'd like to talk with her. Yeah, it seemed like, he got trapped in a teen idol branding, and when he did that nude cover of Rolling Stone, that ended the Partridge Family, and he was happy with that, but it was a while before he could work again.
Oh, well, I was unaware of that whole chapter. Thanks for filling me in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he did good with the song too. I liked it. Did you ever get to meet him or the rest of the family?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, his mom, so to speak, Women Who Write, and I asked her if she remembered when she was on Password.
Oh.
And Jack Cassidy was the contestant.
Right.
And the password was sex.
Mm-hmm.
And the clue she gave was Polaroid. And I said, do you remember that? She said, yes, I do. So that was the only time I met her, was when I raised my hand. I have a question.
I love those old game shows with all the sexual innuendos. Those are awesome.
No, Password was great.
Yeah. We have something in common. We have both performed at the Ice House in Pasadena.
Oh, yes. That launched my career in many ways. I got both of my record deals by playing there, and Bob Stain ran it, and he now runs the Coffee Gallery backstage in Altadena, and I'm playing there Sunday.
Oh, nice.
Wherever he runs something, I go there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's good to have a long-running relationship like that. Yeah. It's a great place, the Ice House. So yeah, you had first you had a contract with Columbia, and it went south pretty quick, right?
Wow, how did you know that? I don't think that's anywhere. Where do you find these things? Yes, that's true. All I got was a car because I had just gotten divorced and gave my husband the car. So I was taking buses, which was unusual. Anyway, so I got a car, and then there was this big payola scandal, I think, and I was signed by Jack Gold, who was a wonderful literate man who ran the west coast of Columbia. And Clive Davis ran the east coast. And somehow, I don't know if it was the payola scandal, but everybody got fired and all the acts they signed got fired. And so I was not on Columbia any longer.
Wow. That's sad too, because Columbia had everybody at that point in time, It's amazing. But then you get signed to 20th Century Records, and it's funny, I didn't even realize Fox had a record company, and a lot of the major movie studios had record companies. Warner Brothers, which is probably the longest running one, and of course MGM and United Artists. That is interesting. When you got signed, was Daryl Zanuck still running Fox?
No, Russ Regan was, I don't know. Maybe he was, but I wasn't as aware of the film part of it. But Russ Regan was a wonderful record man who really had ears. And I mean, I'm not saying that because he signed me. He signed Elton John. He signed everybody. So he was running the record company, and it was just a wonderful time in the record business, and certainly at 20th Century Records.
Right. So I've interviewed a musician who played on your first album. Can you guess who?
Lee Sklar?
Yes.
I know he does a number of interviews. He was interviewed by Vicki Abelson at Game Changers, and I'm doing that again Wednesday. But I just love him. Not only do I love the way he plays, and my bass player, Joe Lamano, plays very melodically also. So I love that kind of playing. But he's just such a wonderful person. I'm so glad you interviewed him.
Oh, yeah. He is a great guy, and he knows where the bodies are buried.
Yes, he does. He was very kind to do a whole hour vlog on me, and he played all these old things that he had played on. And he was just very generous. He's a wonderful soul.
He certainly is. What was the inspiration behind the song Hollywood Town?
Oh, yeah, I didn't answer about that's the way it is with you. It was just a relationship I was in. As far as Hollywood Town is concerned, because I was playing at these gay bars and I didn't know the people, and it seemed like if I left, when I saw Hollywood Boulevard, it was substantially different from Sunset Boulevard. It's like they almost parachuted the people in because you never saw them anywhere else. But they were kind of lost souls, it seemed like. And so when I played the gay bar and walked in Hollywood, even though this was in West Hollywood, I started having a lot of affinity for my audience members and these people who had come to California like I did.
Yeah.
And I wrote the song inspired by them.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood is a lost soul town, I have found that out more and more as time gone on. But yeah, I love your version, and I think Manfred Mann's Earth Band did a fantastic version that, they were already a space rock, slash jazzy undertone kind of a band, and I think they did a great job with it. Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. My publisher sat me down and said, now listen, they're not asking for any part of the royalty, but he wrote a whole set of lyrics that you didn't write, and he put it in there. And I thought it was interesting. It was a whole different take on the song, But I liked it, and any art should be open to interpretation. Like you see a movie, and one person sees one movie, and another person sees another. But I was thrilled and honored that he decided to write some extra lyrics. And then on the back of the album, he said, any similarity between Hollywood Town and some other song he had on the album is purely intentional. So he kind of took the chord changes and wrote his own song, which is fine. You can't copyright that.
Yeah, and that's also very nice of them that they didn't want any part of the publishing. That's very rare in the business.
Yeah. Well, they probably would have been turned down, though, because, I didn't own the copyright. I didn't own the publishing. I owned the writer's part. And so my publisher might have said no, but they didn't ask. They just said, well, we're not asking for anything, and they recorded it.
Mm-hmm. Whose star was that you were sitting on the album cover?
I've been asked that so many times. It was a blank star, I think. And so, I don't know, but it's a very interesting picture. I would never have thought of it, but the photographer suggested it, and then everyone liked it, and now it's, you know about the movie and everything, so.
Yeah. Where did Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady come from?
Well, as I say when I sing it, I wrote this song as I was leaving someone for the last time. And then I say, it was one of the last times I left him for the last time. And the thing was, I was in a relationship that was kind of tumultuous. And I remember I started that on a plane on the way back from someplace where I had seen him. And then I got home and I finished it. So obviously it was a personal story, as most of my songs are, but apparently it hit the nerve of quite a few people. I mean, I would get calls about, I heard your song and I went home and I told my husband I wanted a divorce. That was really not the reason I wrote it, to break couples up. In this particular case, I won't mention who it was for the best, but still, I was just trying to tell one guy one thing to have him wake up and see the light. But now I have a male version, which is being recorded, where the man realizes what he did and says that took responsibility. I mean, the thing every woman is dreaming of, but it's being recorded by Gary Lynn Floyd. It's going to be great.
Can you reveal what the title is going to be called?
Well, it still ain't no way to treat a lady, but he says, you said it was myself I was involved with, and then you started to cry. I guess I never found a way to hear what you were saying until you told me goodbye. That ain't no way to treat a lady, no way to treat my baby, my woman, my friend.
Oh. Oh, that's gonna be good. Yeah, your version of the song really takes my breath away, and I mean that. It sounds more real and authentic coming from you. Not to diminish Helen Reddy's version, but I get the same feeling from your version that I get when I hear Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone or Barry White's Can't Get Enough of Your Love, and that you're narrating as much as you're singing, and you really become the character that you're singing from the perspective of, and exuding desperation from the character in the song. It's always endearing to me. And your version had that, country guitar and layered orchestral arrangement that so many AM songs had in the 70s. Did your version of the song get airplay?
Oh yeah, see that's a hard tale in itself. Well, it got enough airplay that there was another band that recorded it before Helen, and it was called LAX. And it got some airplay, but my version was poised to go on 2 top 40 stations. You know what that means? Top 40 stations. They were like, if you got on these stations, you had a hit.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember. One was in San Francisco and one was here. And the music director said he wanted it sped up. So I think maybe chemical alteration was in play. But anyway, we sped it up, and we were getting ready to release it. He was going on it Monday. This was Friday. And the station in San Francisco was going to go on it if this station did in L.A. And the music director quit on the Friday before that Monday. And the promotion department at 20th Century Records is still talking about it. I mean, they're scattered in the wind. They're in Nashville, but it was heartbreaking to them because that would have made my record a hit rather than my song by another artist. So it was a whole year before Helen's came out.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And when that version took off, were you surprised?
Well, a little bit. I was in Dallas visiting my family, and Jeff Wald, her husband manager, called Helen's husband, and he said, "It looks like you have a hit. We didn't release it as a single, but all the radio stations are playing it." So I didn't really understand too much what that meant. I figured if I had a hit, that was good, but it was difficult because I would get in the car and hear my version all the time, and then a year later it became a real hit. You know what I mean? And so I was happy, and she was very kind to me. She had me on the midnight special, and you know, she was a wonderful person whom I met after she had a hit with my song. She flew me to Las Vegas and introduced me from the stage, and things that, you know, were not necessary for a big artist to do.
That is so wonderful. Yeah, I love hearing stuff like that because I've heard stories. I've talked to songwriters who have never gotten even a thank you from the person that they wrote a hit for. Like a couple of years ago, I talked to Billy Steinberg. Him and Tom Kelly have never been thanked by Madonna for Like a Virgin. And that is just so sad. That really is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You never know whether someone tried to reach someone else and it never got there. So when I hear things like that, I'm suspicious, but because it doesn't sound like Madonna, but, you know, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Helen Reddy was starting to become the prototypical pop feminist of the 70s. She'd done I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, and stuff like that. But, yeah. Didn't Benny Hill cover the song?
Well, you know, I get on my ASCAP statement, I get Benny Hill all the time. I never saw the episode that it was on.
Yeah.
But I have a few songs, like a song called Hold Me that was on something called Death Moon, and I have no idea what it is. It just keeps showing up on my statement.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I used to watch Benny Hill. I don't recall ever seeing that. Did you go on tour and open for big names?
Well, I went on tour. I didn't necessarily open for big names. Like, I opened for The Seldom Scene, which was a bluegrass band. I opened for a madcap comedy act I can't remember the name of, that were supposed to be improv, but they rehearsed all the way through my sound check and marched everyone in the audience out into the parking lot so he could set his head on fire in a garbage can. So I thought, this doesn't look like improv to me, but, you know, whatever. But I don't remember any huge acts that I opened for. That would have been nice.
Did you ever do shows with Ronnie Blakely?
No, I know her because Karen Black was a good friend of mine, and they were together in Nashville, but I never did shows with her. No.
Yeah, one of my favorite interviews I've ever done is Ronnie Blakely. She is just so wonderful. And I met her at a convention 6 years ago, and I told her how much I love her singing voice. And she doesn't hear that very often because so many people at conventions want to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. But it brought a tear to her eye. And I just wish I had had enough money to get an autograph and a picture at that time. But hopefully it'll happen in the future. But at least I had a great interview with her.
Yeah, she's a wonderful girl. I know her a little bit through Karen.
Mm-hmm. In 1975, you went on the Merv Griffin show. How was that experience?
Well, I went on Merv Griffin quite a few times. It was lovely, and he wanted to manage me. And you look back with 2020. Anyway, I enjoyed it. He was the one time I remember the most was when I was on there with what is the kind of diet where you don't eat anything but protein? You know, that guy.
Was it Predican?
No, that's like a health thing. This, somebody who hears this is going to be at home screaming
Atkins?
his name. It's very obvious. It was before keto or anything. It was just Atkins.
Yeah, the Atkins diet.
Atkins was on the show with me.
Oh.
And I was more interested in hearing from him. But yeah, no, Merv Griffin was great, and I performed a number of songs on that show. I think Buddy Hackett was on there with me.
Buddy Hackett. Yeah, let's see. The one I found on IMDb, you were on with Dr. David Rubin, who wrote Everything You Always Want to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask.
Oh, well, where did you find that? Just written up? You didn't actually...
It was on IMDb. You just, click on it, and there's the episode guide there, next to it of the particular episode you were on.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, that was big in the 70s. I don't remember that particular person, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Merv went to the same high school as I did.
Oh.
San Mateo High School, which is also where Chris Christopherson went, and Barry Bostwick, Alicia Silverstone, and Dennis Haysbert, who was in my mom's class. And they've known each other since they were in kindergarten.
Oh.
Yeah, it's got a lot of history, that high school. Did you go on American Bandstand or Midnight Special?
I did go on Midnight Special when Helen Reddy was hosting.
Mm-hmm.
She had me on there at least once, maybe a couple of times.
Was it Gary Mildeer hosting?
No, Helen Reddy was hosting.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, she was the guest host, and so she had me on.
Did you do?
And it was nice, She did a lot of different things back then. It's upsetting a bit, not for my sake, but for hers, that she had 8 #1 records in a row,
mm-hmm.
and they made the movie I Am Woman about her, and I'm very glad they did, because there are people who've never heard her name. I mean, do people know? You're right. People don't go online and look anything up.
Yeah, they don't, and they have the advantage to do it, but there's the short attention span is just, I don't know. It's an interesting time,
Yeah, it is. Maybe when they have their best friend be an AI, that person can help them know what happened before they were born.
Exactly. Did you go on Don Kirshner's rock concerts?
No, I didn't do that. That sounds like fun, but I didn't do that. I did tour,
mm-hmm.
All over when my first album came out, and then I toured when my 5th album came out, but I wasn't on a label then, so I just perform in LA mostly now, and I have, a 5-piece band with my wonderful bass player who plays like Lee Sklar, and flute and cello and violin, and I play keyboards and bass, and my backup singer. So we're doing a show this Sunday at 2.
Awesome.
Bob Staines Club, the Coffee Gallery backstage in Altadena.
In 1976, you wrote the music for an unsold TV pilot called State Fair. How did that job come about?
Oh, I have no idea. Somebody contacted me, and I see that on my statement, too. I don't remember how the songs go or anything else. I'm like Henry VIII, who saw a child on the street and said, well, you're a nice-looking child. Whose child are you? And the child said, yours. That's the way I feel when I hear that I wrote something that I don't even remember,
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago. Someone just approached me, and I said, sure.
Yeah, I never saw it. I was curious if you wrote, carnival music on the piano or something.
No, they were pop songs. That's what they wanted.
I gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
At what point do you meet Misha Siegel?
1981, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He came over to play something. I was collaborating with the guy who couldn't play his own music. It's very strange. And between takes of my hearing this man's music, Misha started just noodling on the piano, and I said, "Ooh, what's that?" And he said, "Oh, that's just something I just made up." So I have been writing with him ever since. I mean, I don't write with him a lot, but we've written for a lot of projects. And because he's Israeli and, well, he speaks beautiful English. He's eloquent and has written books in English. But the point is, he uses me as a lyricist. When I write with Misha, I write lyrics, and generally he writes the music first. But that's how I met him, and then we started working together. And the first thing I think we did was something called Baby Makes Five. Even you may not have heard of that, because it never, they shot 5 episodes, and then it never actually got released, but we had the theme song.
There was a Simpsons episode called Baby Makes 3, and so...
Oh, really?
that's the only familiarity I have with that term.
I see. Okay, well, that works.
Actually, it's called Maggie Makes 3 because it was the story about when Maggie was born. So it was called. It was called And Maggie Makes 3. So yeah, so that's where the familiarity of that term comes from. But you two had like a like-minded kinship in terms of songwriting and just became fast friends.
Misha and I, yeah. Well, I loved his melodies, and I loved writing words to them because they just leapt off the tape or whatever. You know, it's so wonderful writing with someone who has such a strong sense of melody, you know, especially if you're writing for a film, because then you can actually use a lot of melody because they aren't afraid of it in film. Whenever you hear a song that's very melodic, people always say, oh, that sounds like a film. No, it just has melody. Remember? They used to do that. So anyway, it was just heaven writing to his melodies. And then we wrote some musicals later where I had to write the lyric first, which is more difficult for me because if I write a lyric, it has a melody already. But I would just write, you know, words and give them to him. But our best creations have started with the music. Right.
And by the 80s, you know, you start writing songs that become soundtracks to movies. Smokey Robinson and Syreeta did a version the first time on a Ferris Wheel for the soundtrack to The Last Dragon. Great movie and such a sad song for an action movie.
Yeah, well, there's a really good story about that because Suzanne Costin had brought us in. We were writing for Motown at the time, Joe Bett Publishing, and she said, you know, we want you to write a love theme for this movie. And so we wrote it, and we went to Mr. Gordy's house, Barry Gordy, and he said, what? There's no love scene. There's no love theme in this movie. Who told you to write? So he plays it, and this is 3 a.m. by now. He calls the head of TriStar and says, get over here. We're reshooting the end of the movie for this song. So he did. And yes, Smokey Robinson and Syreeta sang it in the movie, but there is a version with Carl Anderson. It was his trademark song, and I'd love for you to hear that. He recorded it with Gloria Loring. Probably 35 people have sung this song at this point, either live or on record, but Smokey and Syreeta did a lovely job for the film, but Carl Anderson just kills it. You know, he was Judas in the movie Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, I love that movie. I've talked to a couple people from it, you know, including Ted Neely.
Yeah.
And Yvonne Elliman. Yeah, two very interesting people, and only they would play those roles. I can't imagine anybody else playing those roles. They're very eccentric and wonderful people.
Well, Carl was Judas.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love that version that Smokey and Syreeta did. I can't believe it didn't reach #1 or win a Grammy.
Well, I understand, you know. It's interesting how the business works, but we have the song, and I have, it's in the movie that's coming up. It's part of my life story, and I still think that song people hear it and they go, oh my God, because the melody, see, that was an example. He wrote that melody, and I was watching him write it, and I kept thinking, yeah, that, every note, yes. So I remembered that this woman who asked us to write it kind of liked analogies. So I thought, oh, okay, here's this young man, this young African-American virgin who's studying Kung Fu, and what do I have in common with him? Well, I have fallen in love for the first time. So what's it like? Well, it's scary. It's kind of like being on a Ferris wheel, So that's why I wrote that, because I remembered that this particular executive at Motown liked analogies. So that's the history of that song.
How about You're Not a Lover by Astral Plane on the Steel Justice soundtrack?
Oh, yeah, that was another song I wrote with Misha. And John Strong, I think, was the guy who produced that movie. We did a lot of work for him, and that was fun. I loved that song.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's very Miami Vice-y and kind of AOR for, the late 80s.
Yeah, I get emails from people who want these songs, and I don't know what to tell them. Just listen to the movie. It's in there,
Well, listen to the song, watch the movie.
Yeah.
Now, from the time I was 5, I watched The New Adventures of Pippi Longstocking over and over again, and to this day, I still have all the songs memorized verbatim. The theme song you co-wrote with Misha is so sprightly wonderful. What's the genesis of that song?
Well, first of all, I had a friend who ran into Ken Anakin, who made that movie. He was the director, and he helped raise the money. And my friend said that he had a friend who had written Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady. So Ken Anakin thought, oh, Pippi is a feminist.
Yeah.
Well, I have to get this woman who wrote Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady. She must be one too. So I somehow met him, and he asked me to write some songs for the film. And I called Misha in because I suspected they needed someone to score the film, and they did, which he did. But we wrote a number of songs which the characters' lips were moving to. So when everyone else and his little brown dog tried to get the job of writing the songs for the film, by the time they had raised the foreign money to make the film, the lips were moving to our songs. So it was very fortunate that we got involved that early. So then we wrote all the songs, including, I think there were 6. They said, if you give us 6 songs, we'll put your name in the beginning of the movie. And we did. And it was a lot of fun. That movie, I've seen it so many times, more than you, believe me.
Oh, believe me, I've seen it my fair share of hundreds of times. I mean, the whole thing, I just love it from start to finish. That song is an accurate description of Pippi in 3 minutes. And it's so memorable. And, it has a great singer, Margie Nelson. Was she a friend of yours?
Yes. Yes, she was one of my backup singers. She's a very good friend. And we tried to use famous people in it, but the children of the producer said, no, we like that one, so she ended up doing it. It was wonderful. And, when I write a song, I think, wait a minute, what do I have in common with this character? She lives alone with a horse and a monkey.
Yeah.
But, I was brought up very independent also, so I just wrote from that viewpoint, and maybe that's why you related to the lyric, because, those of us who are artists do things independently.
And too, her and all the other woman singers on the soundtrack share one thing, and that's that all the songs sound like as if Pippi is singing them. Even though we do hear Pippi sing in the movie, and she's not as good as the singers on the soundtrack, it's kind of like Pippi is singing those songs.
Yeah, I think that was the point when we recorded them, to make that sound like that. That's a good observation.
Yeah, I'll be cleaning the house and then Scrubbing Day will come into my head, or, I'll like something like gum or something will be sticking. I'll be singing sticky situation.
Running away.
Running away. All of them. Life is a breeze. We live it for fun. No apologies to anyone. Yeah.
Wow, you really do know. John Shook was in that movie.
Oh yes, he's a great actor.
Yeah, he was the father. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was Painless in MASH. Is that you playing keyboard on the theme song?
No, that's Misha, I'm sure.
Oh,
or somebody, playing what he wrote.
It's a beautiful, haunting melody.
Mhm.
I just love it. It's you two really hit it out of the park with that one, really.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really rewarding to have a child come up and start singing one of those songs. And I must say that it's very touching that you know so many of them.
Oh yeah, I just love it. It's a huge part of my childhood. I was 5 when the movie came out that summer, and it hit home video by Christmas time, and I was just renting it like all the time and seeing it on HBO growing up.
That's great.
And the funny thing is, I'd never seen the original Pippi, but I know the movie stays true to the original Pippi, but just I've never really had an interest of seeing the old Pippi for some reason. Maybe I will eventually.
Tell me, was the old Pippi was it done with live actors or was it animated?
No, it was. I think there has been an animated version, but like it was live. It was live, and I think it was Australian or New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken. It was like a New Zealand show or something like that.
I see. Yeah, because this one is called The New Adventures of Pippi Longstocking.
Right.
I wondered why that was. I see. There was an earlier movie. Duh. Okay.
Right. When I do more research, I'll let you know. You wrote what was it, lyrics for the Phantom of the Opera remake in 1989?
It wasn't a remake. I'm not sure. You're talking about the horror film, The Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, with Robert Englund.
Yeah. I wrote with Misha the aria that she sings, and we've had so many requests from people for that. Because I don't know how they heard it. You can't understand the lyrics at all, so I have to send them to them. But yeah, I wrote that for that film, and he scored it. It's a beautiful score.
Yeah, my friend Jill Sholin, she was in that movie with Robert Englund, and yeah, I met Robert Englund at a con 5 years ago, and my picture with him is like my logo on my my YouTube channel and my podcast and everything.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I keep the picture by my bed, too.
But you can go to sleep anyway.
I can. Oh, because I got also a picture of Diane Franklin as well, and she's gorgeous.
Oh, okay.
Then you wrote "Always You" for Graydon Clark's "The Forbidden Dance," which is kind of a salsa song.
Yeah, I mean, in those days, Misha would say, "I have this film. You need to write this," and so I did. But I do consult what the story is about, but I have to admit I've never seen the film. I hope it works.
I saw it like one time years ago. Yeah, and Graydon and I talked about it a little bit. Yeah, I'd have to revisit it, but I thought that was an interesting point to bring up. So how did you get into acting for Henry Jaglom movies?
Oh, well, I actually did music for his movies, for 2 or 3 movies before that. I think he wrote me into this play he was writing called Just 45 Minutes from Broadway. And so I was in the play for a year, which was directed by Gary Imhoff. And while the other actresses were getting their hair done and all this stuff, I would be sitting backstage talking to Henry because he is the most interesting person.
Yeah.
And has stories forever that you can't believe each one is more fascinating than the one before.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to know him, and then when he made the film version, of course, I was in it. But I was also in Irene in Time. I know how that happened. His at the time girlfriend, who then he later married, Tana Frederick wanted to perform with my band and me at Genghis Cohen, which is a club here. And so we did. And after he saw that show, he called me and said, I'm going to do a movie, and your band is going to be in it. It'll be kind of like Oh Lucky Man. And the band will comment on the action of the film. So he used like 6 of my songs in it, and my band was in it. I didn't really have much of an acting role. I was just playing piano and singing and stuff like that. And he used my songs. And it was a father-daughter story, so I had quite a few songs he could use for that. So then, I guess that was before he actually had me doing the acting. But yeah, it was nice being in that film and then actually acting in Just 45 Minutes from Broadway. And I was in the play with Diane Salinger.
I love Diane. Diane is a good friend of my mom's now, because we went to L.A. after a year after I interviewed her. We went to L.A. and we had lunch with her. Her and my mom hit it off, and they talk at least once a week on the phone. And sometimes I'll walk into the room. Her and Diane will be having a very bawdy conversation, and I'm like, oh my God, Simone from Pee-wee's Big Adventure is having a bawdy conversation with my mother. I have made it. I can die happy now.
That's funny. Oh, yeah, Diane, we always joke about the part that I played and she played in that play, but I won't reveal it. It's part of the plot, so I'll leave it as a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, I'm known as being the biggest cinephile known to man, but I have to be honest, I have never seen a Henry Jaglom movie, and I'll tell you why. When I was growing up, his movies weren't on video store shelves that I can recall, and they weren't being played on cable that I can recall. But I became aware of him when I started researching Natalie Wood, because I'm a huge Natalie Wood fan, and they had a relationship, and that's how I first found out about him. He's always been this, kind of mythic guy who, who tried to conform to Hollywood for a hot minute and then made these counterculture movies that were very non-conforming.
Have you not seen any of them yet?
I still haven't. No, I would like to. I've talked to a couple people who are in, what's that movie called? A Safe Place. I'd like to see that one. Yeah, like I've talked to Phil Proctor and Wendy Gerard. They were both in that.
Oh, I love Phil. Well, you can get them all. They're all available. Apple. Oh yeah. Every place. And at the very last resort, you can just contact Henry Jaglom. He'll send you DVDs of all of them.
Yeah, I would love to see them. Absolutely.
I think you would like them. I mean, they're as he says, there are no car crashes and no explosions, but there's a lot of human emotion in them, and I think you'd like them very much.
Oh, I prefer, kind of artsy movies. I love those the most, more than anything. The explosions, I mean, they're nice, but I love movies that are about something.
Yeah.
So, do you like acting?
Yeah, I do. I don't like the business side of it. So if somebody wants me to put me in a part, I love doing that. But I don't. I was married to an actor when I first got to town, and 30 years went by before I met my husband, who is I'm married to now. Mm-hmm. But I saw what he went through, and I can't go through that. I mean, it's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of waiting around and lots of downtime. Do you regret not doing it sooner, though? No, I did some acting. I studied the Dallas Theater Center and stuff like that. But, when I do my show, I embody the song completely, and that's acting. I mean, I'm in present time communicating real emotion. If that's not acting, I don't know what is, but I'm not going to, go through trying to get an agent and get parts for other people's words and stuff. No, I'm a singer-songwriter. I already have an acting career. Yeah. So you started teaching songwriting, and you were reluctant to do it at first, right?
Yeah, they called me in 1985 from USC and said I had to do it. They were going to start a songwriting program there, and I said, well, you can't teach it. You either have it or you don't. So in 1986, they called me back and said, come on, So I did, and I enjoyed it a little bit, but I didn't like getting a parking place at USC. So after a year or two, I quit, and I taught for the Songwriters Guild of America and National Academy of Songwriters and all these different things, and now I just teach privately. But I've been teaching ever since, and I absolutely love it.
Do you get a satisfaction teaching that you don't get when you're writing songs or performing them?
Actually, yes, because I can see immediately what the student needs to do, and I tell them, and then I don't have to go do it. I just have, it's almost like having people who work for you, go do this. And then it turns out, because I developed a step-by-step approach that pretty much takes the effort out of it. If they just do it that way, I trick them into doing what I do intuitively, which is, tell the story with visuals, with a melody that makes your hair stand on end, and all of these elements to the song that you can't really do all at once if you don't know how to do it. Like if you were to throw a pot as a potter and you'd never used a wheel, it would not turn out very well the first time. So I have them do little individual steps of things they can already do. And by the end of 8 steps, they have a song, and every muscle of songwriting is exercised one a week so that they aren't dragging some weakness with them for the rest of their career. And so I get to see these beautiful songs blossom out of these people. I wouldn't say it's something I don't get from writing and performing myself, but it's a whole other dimension of what I can give to these people. I feel that I give to my audiences and the people who buy my records, and that's one kind of gift. But to be able to enable another person to do that is really rewarding.
That certainly is. Are you ever going to record another album? Because, they're online now.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm making one now. Actually, it's called Paintings. It's one of my newer songs, and all of the songs are songs that I've written since the last album. There were many more, but I whittled it down to 14. So, yeah, I'm making it now. My entire band has played on it except my bass player, who wanted to hear what everyone else was going to do so he could kind of improvise the way he does.
That's awesome. Do you know when that's going to be out?
It'll probably be a few months, Gary Lynn Floyd is doing an album of all my songs, and we'll probably have our albums pretty much come out at the same time, and it's possible that the film will be done then too. So it's crazy right now.
Oh yeah, you're making a documentary about your life, right?
Well, I'm not, but Tom Solari is, yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you know the status of that?
He's in editing right now.
Nice. So it's pretty much done, except it needs to be edited.
Yeah, well, he's done the major photography, but I think he's hoping to come to this next show and get some more shots of the individual band members and things, because he's interviewed lots and lots of people connected to my career and my life. But he said, this is a moving picture, so I have to get people moving. So I think he wants to shoot a little bit more, but he's in editing, so I guess that's why he realized he needs that. So
that's pretty cool.
Hopefully Sunday he'll get some shots.
And Becoming Remarkable is that your memoir?
Oh, heavens no.
Oh.
No, I don't have a memoir. And someone interviewed me the other day, and I said, unfortunately, Oscar Levant already took the perfect title for my memoir. It's called Memoirs of an Amnesiac.
Oh.
I don't remember what happened, even in the 80s, and you said you were going to interview me. Thank heavens you remember all this stuff. But anyway, That book was 48 articles on songwriting that had been published around the country. Mm-hmm. And someone, Naomi Healing, a wonderful writer herself, edited the book into sections. And so now it's those articles, and it's called Becoming Remarkable for Songwriters and Those Who Love Songs.
Oh, lovely, lovely. So tell me again, this Sunday is going to be at what show?
It's a coffee gallery backstage in Altadena, and it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm going to have my entire band, as I explained, and then Gary Imhoff, the singer and actor, and he teaches an acting class, a music artist workshop I've been in for 10 years. He's coming to do a duet with my backup singer, Andrea Ross Green. And so that's our show. Yeah, we're going to be doing it for about an hour and a half on Sunday at 2 o'clock.
How do you feel about performing in the afternoon time as opposed to nighttime?
I really like it because I usually perform at night, but I find that when I do it in the afternoon, and there's actually time afterwards, and I get to see people and stuff. And Altadena is a schlep. I'm not sure I really like going there in the middle of the night, so
yeah, it's a drive.
I love doing the matinees.
Yeah, it's beautiful over there at least.
Yeah, it's good.
Harriet, thank you so much for coming on today. You are such a lovely lady and still so talented, and I hope the show goes great and that documentary turns out very well, and that you have a great rest of your day and be safe out there.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the interview, and I really liked the questions you had fully researched and asked me. I do appreciate it. And so tell all my friends you've interviewed, if you talk to them again, tell them hi from me.
I certainly will. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Harriet Schock, ain't she a sweetheart? What a great lady, huh? She's the very definition of Southern hospitality, and I'm so glad we got to talk today. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.